I'll tell you how it all started. One quiet Saturday morning, sun barely up, sweat already running down my back while I unloaded lumber from the truck. I'd been saving for years to finally build an addition to my little home office, the kind of project you plan in your head 1,000 times before you ever lift a hammer. Permits in order, deed secure, inspection already scheduled, everything was lined up. But in my neighborhood, dreams don't get built without somebody trying to tear them down, and that somebody showed up in the form of a police cruiser rolling slow into my driveway. Out steps Officer Morales, adjusting his belt, squinting at me like he wasn't sure if he was walking into a crime scene or a cookout. He says, "Morning, sir. We got a call about unauthorized construction." I knew instantly who had made that call. Mrs. Callahan, the HOA secretary, the kind of neighbor who peers over hedges like a crow spotting roadkill. And sure enough, here she comes, sun hat tilted like a badge of authority, clipboard in hand like she's carrying the Constitution. She points at me and practically shouts, "That's him, officer. He's building without HOA approval. Section 12, paragraph 4. He's in violation." And I just wipe the sawdust off my jeans and tell Morales, "Look, I've got every paper you need right here." We walk to my truck, I pull out the deed, the permits, all stamped and signed. Morales flips through, nods, and says, "Checks out. He owns this lot, got full rights." You should have seen Callahan's face. It turned crimson like she'd just bitten into a raw lemon. She stammered something about community standards, but Morales just tipped his hat, wished me a good day, and left her standing there gripping that clipboard like it owed her money. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't over. This was just round one. 2 days later, I'm tightening bolts on the roof frame when a shiny white SUV pulls up, half on the curb, like it owns the street. Out steps this stiff-looking guy in a polo with the HOA logo stitched over his chest. Introduces himself as Brian Lake, Architectural Compliance Officer. I had to laugh. I didn't even know our HOA had one of those. He hands me a cease and desist letter full of legal-sounding fluff. Claims my side lot, the one I'd bought fair and square last year, was actually designated community garden space by an emergency board vote. I stared at him, then asked, "So you're telling me the HOA voted to steal my land after I'd already bought it, and didn't bother to tell me?" He clears his throat and says, "It passed unanimously." I tell him flat, "That's not governance. That's land theft." He doesn't flinch, just warns me they'll fine me $500 a day and pursue a lien. I couldn't help but laugh. You can't put a lien on what you don't own. He didn't even smile, just marched back to his SUV, slammed the door, and drove off like a man late for his own funeral. That night, I spread county maps across my kitchen table, highlighting every boundary in neon yellow, stapled them to the deed, and dropped the whole stack off at my lawyer's office. By the next morning, my neighbor across the street, Denise, a retired nurse with a sharper tongue than any scalpel, walks over and hands me an envelope that was misdelivered. Inside, a $2,000 fine for unauthorized construction on common property, plus a threat to suspend my so-called community privileges. Denise just shakes her head and mutters, "They picked the wrong house." So I filed a formal complaint with the county, and my lawyer fired back with a cease and desist of our own. That's when the game changed. The county prosecutor opened a preliminary investigation into the HOA's conduct. Suddenly, I noticed their maintenance trucks were gone, replaced by unmarked vans lurking around my street, cameras pointing out from half-open windows. One guy even tried to snap photos from behind my fence until I walked out with my own camera. He left faster than you can say trespass. A week later, a woman from the county's real estate fraud division, Detective Alina Torres, shows up at my door with a binder full of maps and notes. She tells me straight, "I've seen shady HOAs before, but redrawing property lines by internal vote? That's new." She flips to a forged boundary map and shakes her head. If this was intentional, it's not just civil, it's criminal. Saturday rolls around, and I walk into the community clubhouse for the first HOA meeting I'd bothered attending in years. Place was packed, neighbors buzzing like they knew something big was about to drop. I stood up, holding my folder, and said loud enough for the back row to hear, "This board tried to reclassify my private property as community land, then issued fines and threats based on that lie." Gasps all around. Lake leans forward, his jaw tight, ready to argue, but my lawyer, Tom, strolls to the front and lays my deed on the table. Then the fake cease and desist. Then finally a letter from the prosecutor's office announcing an active investigation. You could hear the air leave the room. Torres herself stepped forward and said flatly, "Submitting forged boundary maps to the county is not a misunderstanding. It's fraud." Half the board members looked like they'd seen a ghost. Jolene Callahan sat frozen, her hands trembling. Neighbors pulled out phones, snapping photos of the evidence, whispering to each other. The board didn't even try to finish the meeting. They just walked out. But the story didn't end there. Turns out the board hadn't just been messing with me. They'd been running a full-blown extortion racket. The DA's office uncovered emails where Callahan and Lake kept lists of homeowners to target with maximum fines, then laundered the money through fake maintenance contracts. They'd pulled in over 30 grand in half a year. When the arrests came, it was like watching dominoes fall. Callahan hauled out in cuffs, Lake arrested at his office, their attorney caught drafting fake municipal letters to intimidate residents. News vans swarmed the neighborhood, and suddenly our quiet little cul-de-sac was on the 6 o'clock news. Neighbors who'd stayed silent for years started speaking up. One family admitted they almost sold their home after being fined 5 grand for trimming a tree. Another guy had voice recordings of Lake demanding donations to make violations disappear. It was extortion dressed up as community rules. The county froze the HOA's accounts, suspended their authority, and eventually barred every board member from ever serving again. A new board was elected under county oversight, this time made up of folks who actually cared about the neighborhood. Fines were replaced with community service suggestions, meetings turned into potlucks, and for the first time, people showed up not out of fear, but because they wanted to. Me? I finished my office, mounted my deed and permit in a frame on the wall like trophies, right next to the county's official boundary map with my lot highlighted in red. A reminder of how close I'd come to losing what was mine. Not long after, I ran into Officer Morales at the hardware store. He slapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "You know, not many people stand up to an HOA and win, let alone get their leaders indicted." I just shrugged and told him I didn't like being lied to on my own land. He chuckled, asked if I'd ever thought about running for city council. I waved him off. Politics wasn't my thing. These days, when I look across the street and see Denise laughing with neighbors, no clipboards in sight, no threats taped to doors, just folks being folks, I realize the HOA didn't just get dismantled. It got defanged, exposed, and replaced with something better. And my little office, the one they tried so hard to stop, it's still standing, solid as ever. Now here's the thing. Some people say I went too far, that maybe I should have just played nice, kept my head down, let the board have their way. Others tell me I didn't go far enough, that people like Callahan and Lake should have been punished harder. What do you think? Was justice served here, or should it have gone another way? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear how you'd handle it if an HOA came after your land. And hey, if you know someone who's ever been pushed around by a board like this, share this story with them. Maybe it'll remind them they're not alone, and that sometimes the only way to win is to fight back.